after the president of Uganda, the incumbent Yoweri Museveni, won his 7th term. I think it will be 40 years in power. The man is, as you can see, old but very determined to lead Uganda. And apparently won over 70% of the vote.
Yeah, I think he got 71% of the vote, according to the Ugandan Electoral Commission. I'm not sure what their title is, but I think they declared him winner, and so he goes for another couple of years. And
President Ruto called that a triumphant win. That's something we'll discuss as we go into the show, and maybe next week with more detail. But today, we're joined by 2 guests. First, Mutemi Wakiyama. He's an activist, community organizer, and he's a budding storyteller. Mutemi, asante sana for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And we also have George Sikulu. He's the CEO of the National Parents Association of Kenya. George, asante sana for coming.
Thank you so much.
On such short notice, but you made time, na tunashukuru. The conversation of the day is going to be the biggest story in the country. Grade 10 students are joining senior secondary. And there's a lot of obstacles they're facing. Apparently, just slightly over 27% of them have so far enrolled and joined the schools they were sent to by the ministry. But a lot more, where are the 73%? Which school are they going to? Why are they not still in school? And why is CBE facing so many obstacles? How many years after it was proposed and everything was passed? Tell me.
It's about 6 years.
6 years. Because I saw tweets from 2019 by you on this subject. It's amazing how 6 years after this thing was stamped and approved and it was meant to be rolled out, there's still so many issues. Issues such as even having enough resources to make the thing work. So that's what we'll be speaking about today. Remember, you can engage us on Twitter, on YouTube, the comment section where you're watching this on. If it's on Twitter, if it's YouTube. We're trying to get on TikTok. Bear with us. We're trying to make it happen. Thank you for joining us from wherever you're watching us, whichever method you're using to stream this live. But gentlemen and lady, let's get into it. CBE, CBC, 7 years old, still failing. I'll be frank with you, I didn't know how this system worked until not so long ago. Let me put it like that. No one to look bad in front of the cameras. But we have a parent of a grade 10 student in Mutemi, and we have an association leader of the Parents Association of Kenya. Both of your perspectives will inform this conversation, but I think it's important for us to understand exactly how this system works. And Justine has been doing her homework for months on CBE. First of all, it was CBC, and then it was CBE. I don't know the difference. Justine, please get us up to speed.
So I just know the definitions, where CBC is supposed to be competency-based curriculum, and then it was they added an E because maybe the C was blocking something, so it was changed to CBE, and now it's competency-based education. I don't know if the tenets of the education system or the curriculum truly changed, but the structure of it is, instead of having standardized assessments where people sit down for tests and then you're judged by that, it's like the assessment is done over the years in which you're studying. So every single grade you study, your teacher helps judge you because they're the person who are in contact with you all the time, and also your parents contribute to your education, so they're not just like backbenchers and like, oh, shout out to you going to school. So that has been removed. And also a lot of the sections in the education system where you would just learn certain subjects up until this point and then change the subjects when you go into high school, that's not there anymore. So they're trying to implement a system called pathways, where they do have pathways in STEM, pathways in social sciences, and pathways in arts and sports. And what you study in like the lower classes all the way to junior school, all the way to senior school. So the junior school really informs what ends up happening in senior school. And I think the head of the Parents Association can actually like explain further. But my understanding is standardized testing that kind of makes it a cramming method in school and just pushes students to not know what they're studying is part of what that change is. And also just making it more relatable between the parents and the kids. But may I have proper beef with this system because of how divisive the school system is, especially to the parents who want their kids to have a good education, but they are completely under-resourced. That is,
We'll get further into that.
Yes, but that's my basic understanding of the setup.
So 3 pathways, you either take arts or you could go the STEM direction. But tell me, you've been a firm critic of CBE from 2016, and you have very good reasons for that.
Yeah, so one of my my many iterations is that I'm an activist and a community organizer. And one of the things we advocate for is effective public participation, is decision making, which is captured in our constitution. And if you look at the public, so a lot of the judgments that have been made by the courts lately, like since the 2010 constitution passed, they've really tried to emphasize the need to consult Kenyans when you're making policy decisions, especially major policy decisions, whether it's healthcare, education, and that kind of thing. And our contention then, around 6-7 years ago, in terms of CBC then, was that there was no adequate consultation and public participation. An educational system and an education curriculum are 2 different things. So one of the things has been conflating the 2, whether it's the education system we were changing, or whether, which is 844 was an education system, or 762 prior to that, or whether it was the curriculum we were changing, the CBC. That's why, the CBC versus CBE, curriculum, competent-based curriculum versus competent-based education. So our contention then was that the government intended to change the education system, but wanted a shortcut. So they went for changing the curriculum because of the rigorous practice that would be needed to change an education system, including the investment. And I think that conversation is like, you asked that question of whether enough was invested, enough research was done, enough was invested in terms of schools and that kind of thing. And I would assume that the mandarins in government knew that they did not have the capacity to roll out an education system change, because then we have a constitution that would require that if you're going to implement a whole change, the child from Lavington, where we are, gets the same access from a child from Turkana or Wajir or wherever, and that means you started. If you're talking about equal access and the requirements of Article 43, then you should not be discriminating on any child based on where they were born or which background they come from.
But then why did they keep the curriculum despite those issues?
So curriculum basically means you're not changing the education system. You're just changing what people learn when they go to class. Yeah, and of course there was talk of removing exams and the cramming and that kind of thing. And I think a bit of one of the biggest critics has been Mwalimu Wandia Njoya, and what she kept asking is, what is the education philosophy behind CBC? And the need for philosophy, if I could just break it down a bit, is that if Kenya is a country or a nation, and it wants a certain type of citizen, then it designs an education system to produce that kind of citizen, to equip them with the necessary skills. Ideally, that's in an ideal world. So you then train teachers, build infrastructure like schools and all that to deliver that kind of education. Now, what we've had before CBC, 844, 762, is going all the way, can be traced to up to around 1806. Prussians or the Germanic people then, their rulers were defeated by Napoleon in a war. And in 1806, they were like, part of the reason in the analysis of why they lost that war was that they had citizens who were not compliant, who were not or if they were given orders, especially the soldiers, to go and kill so and so, they would ask why, you know, or why do I need to do it? Give me the proper weapons, or give me, like they would question authority. And so they decided that we need a population that is compliant, that takes orders, that is, so it's for control. And that was the model that was, then it became so effective in reducing agency and individualism within the population that it was now adopted by the rest of Europe and the US.
And therefore Africa.
The US that we all want. And of course, Africa, it was brought here by the colonialists, the France, the UK and all that. But that has been the system of education that has largely informed the world. Now, there's one plus for that, is that the idea was to educate the entire population, make sure that every child undergoes that, and then they standardize training and teaching. Yeah. But the intention was not to have an educated citizen public. It was to have a compliant public. That is a philosophy. Yeah. So what was our philosophy when we were changing CBC? That is where our criticism was coming from. Yeah.
Good points you're raising there. But you, George, sit with the parents. And he is a parent. He's expressing all these issues with CBE. First of all, it's a problem that public participation was never done. Therefore, his opinions were not considered to a degree he was happy with. And now, fast forward years later, he's taking his kid to school and he's facing obstacles. He might have succeeded in it, but over 70% of kids who are supposed to be in school were not in school by the deadline of 16th of January, which was last Friday, pushing the ministry to extend that to 21st. What obstacles are the parents facing?
I would like you to, since I'm the CBC champion for parents, for the community, there's the CBC champion for Ministry of Education, and the CBC champion on the community side. And I'm the national CBC champion on the community side. So you'll allow me to provide some facts, then come to the feelings of parents, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So it will be a bit different from your perspective, so mine is based now on facts and what is written, which you can now find online everywhere. So first of all, curriculum reform is a constitutional provision. Education reform is also a constitutional provision. So education has always been reformed. Education is not reformed by politics or politicians or government as we know it. Education is reformed by educationists. So there's a cycle that education follows, like any other developmental activity. It always begins with a needs assessment, then policy formulation, then if there's need for design, then design is done. Then if it's a curriculum, for example, curriculum design is done, and then syllabuses are developed and designed, because syllabus is different from curriculum, and then support materials are developed, then teacher preparation happens, pre-testing or piloting happens, national implementation happens, then monitoring and evaluation. So apparently, even in this room, I am not 844 myself. So I'm even another system. So therefore, there has always been a change. And in fact, the pathways were in our system. So even for someone like me, there's nothing new, so to speak. So, therefore, in short, the Ministry of Education has continuous monitoring and evaluation of education system and what is going on in education. And the data that is collected is used for decision-making and policy improvement. Education is futuristic, so education is not a static. So education is meant for the future where that particular generation is going to. The education that 844, the education that we had before 844 was meant for our generation, as we are now 56 years and so on. So we've done what we needed to do with what was needed at that time. As we had pathways, I had senior school experience. I studied maths, geography, economics only at senior school, but from 1 to Form 4, I had studied mechanical engineering. As you can see, there is even no connection. We had engineering even at high school level. So Kabete Polytechnic which is now a polytechnic, was a high school. That was my high school. It was for A students. I got A, and so on. So those kind of things keep changing, but we were developed for the market that we've had now, and we have run out of business. Like, we can't compete 844 because they were developed for the current market. Ours is over. And the future, your child will know, if your child gets what you got in 844, they will have no future, because their future has totally different implications. And I'm coming to that in a minute. But in 2010, a new constitution was developed in the country. And that new constitution, among what it developed, was what we call the national goals of education. And so education had initially always been fashioned according to another person. Remember, we had come from a colonial history. So education, just like he says he's correct, that time it was designed by someone else, and it was meant to get a citizenry that follows a leadership that is foreign, so to speak. So until 2010, then the Constitution said it's time for us to have now education that we define. So this particular curriculum, which we call Kenya Basic Education Curriculum Framework, where CBC is only a nickname which the public uses, that's not the official name. This Kenya Basic Education Curriculum Framework this is the first one that we have, which is Kenyan, which was discussed as part of the Constitution. And it began by a philosophy of education, as well as defining the goals of education. Why are we taking children to school? And so the goals are 8. 1, that education must foster nationalism, patriotism, and national unity. It also must promote socio-economic, technological, and industrial needs for national development. It must also be able to promote individual development and self-fulfillment. It must also promote sound moral and religious values. It must also promote social equity and responsibility. It must also promote respect for development of Kenya's rich and varied culture, and then promote international consciousness and foster positive attitudes towards other nations, and promote positive attitudes towards good health and environmental protection.
Is it achieving all of those as it stands?
This is now the goal of education in the Constitution. In the Constitution. We are not yet at CBC. Yes, okay. We are just at what the Constitution dreams for it. Yeah. Now, so if you could be patient, I could take you through to where now we arrive at CBC, so that now I can show you where the problems of parents are coming from. Okay. So we must understand the path, then see which point of the path is not working. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. So because personally, I have a challenge if we say there's nothing, I have a challenge with that. There can't be nothing.
Then what is there? What is there, George?
So what is there is that on the basis of what the Constitution says, the national goals of education changed. So because of that, there needed then to be a reform of education. Because the education that was there then, by 2010, was not able to deliver on these national goals. So education reform process then began in 2013. And so the competency-based curriculum is let me call it education. The competency-based education then was a product of designing now a new education system that would enable those kind of goals to be achieved, because the goals we had before were not these ones. So this is the first time we're having those goals in the new dispensation. And so this is also the first time we're having an education system to address those goals. And that education system has not reached university yet. So that education system, I've also heard other people say that there was no philosophy of education before, and it's true. So now, since 2013, now there's a philosophy. So the philosophy is that the CBC, or rather the Kenya Basic Education Curriculum Framework, is meant to produce an engaged, empowered, and ethical citizen. So now we have that philosophy. So that the aim is to produce that. And how to do that is that we stop we stop being teacher-centered and we become learner-centered. So that's why the mission says, let us nurture every learner's individual potential.
Individual potential.
So get out of competition, get out of what, and have individual potential. And then, because they are being prepared for life, so there was then research around what are in their life, in their 30 years. In their education is about 30 years. Any education system should be about 30 years. In their 30 years, what would be the key competencies required for them to succeed? So they came up with 7. One is digital literacy. In their dispensation, they need also research, learning to learn. Also, communication and collaboration is important in their day and age. Critical thinking and problem solving is important for them. It's their age of AI, so they have to think.
George,
yes.
I'm really sorry I have to interrupt you because you have to move on with the conversation. But you've laid very good grounds for a debate here, and I think I'd let Kiama, because he's challenged your view on the whole curriculum. We could wrap this up so we could proceed to the next part.
But at least briefly, just for so that there's no confusion, a curriculum is a component of an education system. So the education system has a curriculum, has an assessment, and has a pedagogy. So, and then policies and support material. So we call it competency-based curriculum, which was the first thing to roll out. Then the second thing we've just rolled out now is the competency-based assessment, which you have now experienced a little bit of that. And then we have rolled out also the competency-based pedagogy, which is a certain teaching style or learning style, which is different. And you will see that in grade 10, the week is arranged very differently this time. They have 5 hours for community service learning, and so the week is very different from a normal week in school.
So I agree with his articulation of the process. And the process that should have actually, when I said our contention was that, you see that clarity that he has in terms of the whole process of reforming an education system, or even agreeing that it was an education system that was being reformed. The mandarins were very clear then, they were not reforming the education system, they were reforming the curriculum. The education philosophy has been retrofitted after the questions. Otherwise, at that point, there's nobody who could give you, this is a philosophy, and he's articulated three key points in that philosophy. And our contention is not that Kenya does not need a reformed education system. Actually, it was long overdue to reform the education system. But because of what it means to reform the education system, and in terms of even the new the 2010 constitution, that process then needed to involve Kenyan education experts, Kenyan parents, just ordinary citizens. The CBC, the initial CBC, was actually designed by the British Council. And you were asking 50-something years into independence, why is our former colonial masters designing an education system for us? And of course, that has been kept under wraps. But the initial draft that was then adopted was designed by the British Council. So the issue is not whether we needed to reform the education system. And the thing is, the fact that actually the biggest pointer to how incompetent it was is the fact that 6 years down the line, 7 years down the line, we're still having the debate.
It's 12.
I mean, from the time the implementation began.
2013.
Yeah, okay, so it was introduced to the school system in
2013.
2013. So 12 years. That's even worse. Yeah, the fact that you're still You know, because a whole generation has come.
Has come and it has gone.
Yeah, I'm a parent with a child in grade 10. I can tell you that child is in school the last 1 week or so. At least I'm privileged in that way that I was able to take her to a private school. But they haven't had any learning.
Yeah. So far.
Teachers don't know what to teach. Books have not been allocated. Is it true?
Yes, they will not learn for about 20 days.
And as you
Because
say,
there needs to be, the children might find that the subject they have chosen is not what they like. So we have 1 month for them to explore and then change.
Why
last
7?
time.
So lastly, all over the world, whether it's CBC, whether it's rote learning, whether it's what, you do not make decisions in terms of pathways at the age of 14. In fact, where education, the places, the Singapores and the Finlands, when you look at them, the decision on what pathway to follow is done after. In fact, in most of these countries, you do a general degree. You don't specialize in law, in architecture, engineering, if you don't have already a degree, whereby you learn to learn. You talked about one of the philosophy being to learn. Because for you to develop that capacity to inquire, to even, let me give you a practical example. My daughter, 4 years ago when she was going to grade 6, she really wanted to, when we were having that discussion, because we didn't know what this thing was, and she really wanted to be a nurse so she can take care of people. She has that public spirit of wanting to take care of people. And then 2024 happened and the Gen Z protest, because she's the tail end of the Gen Zs. And she saw what happened to her generation, the arrests, the abductions, the killing, and that kind of thing. And she decided the best way to take care of her generation is to become a lawyer. So now she's decided she wants to become a lawyer. That's in a space of 2 years, 3 years, just changing her. And she's 16. I'm sure I told her, we're having that conversation, and I'm telling her that is not written on stone. It is okay if you change your mind somewhere along the way. Ideally, from around 18 to 2021, you could have formed your personal philosophy in terms of what you want to do in life based on the education that you've gotten and the experiences in life, and of course circumstances, whether you're able to afford to go to a certain college or that kind of thing. So part of the issues is that all this is being retrofitted in reaction to the critics. And it's okay that they're responding to critics, but why, when the CBC was being rolled out, there was no piloting. Because he talked about piloting as one of the processes.
He actually mentioned that.
There had been no piloting.
George.
Yes.
Why is it,
what's the factor on how it was actually piloted? Because I think there's a very big disconnect, and just to reference Mutemi's concern, there's a part in the structure that, especially the philosophy being about having an engaged, empowered, and ethical citizen. It's like supposed to be at the core of it. But apoko empowered, I don't even think there's a connection, because I feel like for a lot of parents, they feel a little removed because they want to participate and assist as much as they can in a way that the education system is structured, but also they don't know how to empower their kids because of how it's like we're pushing the system that was before 844, and like someone is wheeling a wheelbarrow in that's written CBC, and everyone is supposed to actually figure out how to navigate that. So my question to you is, how does that philosophy fit in how the structure is set up, considering what is happening right now?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. First of all, this new curriculum, CBE, is not in pieces like the old. That's one of the changes. Okay, let me start with the main changes. The main change is that 844 was content focused, so therefore it was teachers disseminate information to learners. This new one is focused on acquisition of mental competencies, cognitive competencies. It's an acquisition. So it's not skills. Skills and competence are not the same thing. This one is competency-based, not skill-based. Skill ni kama being a carpenter, kuchonga hii ni skill. But competency is something like, for example, critical thinking is a competence. It's a cognitive thing. Then the 844 is rigid and prescriptive in curriculum. It has no flexibility. You go to school and you're told this is what you do. That's why the teachers will run people and say, you have to study this much because we have to finish this by this time. This one is learners' interest and special abilities are being considered in the way the curriculum is rolled out. Then for 844, it is the role of the teacher is directive and authoritative. But at CBC, the learner takes charge of their learning. You'll be amazed that the current teacher, after retooling, is told, you know, as when we were in school, whenever the teacher would appear in class, what will happen? We'll all run or hide or sit down, sit still, and so on. Teacher coming in meant life stops and a new life starts. Yeah. These ones, they are told, when you walk in class, you take 2 minutes and allow the children to finish what they were doing. Yeah. Why? Because in real life, we don't have a situation in the market here where people just walk in and others start running. So what were we being prepared for? When the teacher came and we ran, what exactly were we being prepared for in the world of work? So let's prepare children for what is real. And so teacher-centered, summative, and so on. And so just before you move on, that in her question, so the difference is that for us then it was a breaking, ni kama mfumo wa kuchuja, yeah? Like you studied up to a certain level, and if you fail, then and you don't proceed. This one, it is one continuous system with 2 years in foundational learning where you're learning something different. You're only learning interaction skills, PP1, PP2. Then the same person moves to what we call primary, and they are doing 3 years, grade 1 to 3, and they're only learning socialization skills. And then they move to junior school, where they are now at the stage, I'm a teacher by training myself from KU, so at their age now, they are at the point of cognitive development at that age. So in the age of grade 7 to 9, they focus on exploration because that is also the adolescent age. That's also the time when they're asking questions. So they are learning, you reduce the number of teachers and increase the number of assignments and increase group work, so that these people are finding their own materials, so that you prepare them for senior school, where they are focusing on pre-career. So in senior school, they are not doing any career. They are saying, for example, like my parent here, and it's good to have you here, my parent is saying, if their child once feels like they were impressed by something to do with what lawyers do, so they begin to think about wanting to be a lawyer.
George,
so at senior school, you tell them...
Sorry to interrupt again. You are reading how this system works.
How it's supposed to work.
Yes, how it's supposed to work. Yes. But that's not what the parents are experiencing. It's not how things are as we speak right now. 70% are outside. That's a problem. Yeah. You said that for the first 30 days, kids are not learning anything in schools. Then why are they in school?
Let me answer.
I really want you to get to the part where you explain why this is not working.
Okay. Yeah, and also just to add on it, at the moment as it stands, there's 800,000. Like there's a very huge group of kids who are going to senior school. I think about 1.13 million.
Yes.
That's a very big number. Only 300,000 within the first week were able to go to school and be registered, that the system was able to recognize 300,000 of them have gone to school. 800,000 are still outside. Yeah. And then if you've watched the news over the last couple of days, it's filled with stories of kids. So one of them, I think he's called Mwangi, decided to go work in a dump site.
Oh yes, that's right.
There's a kid whose grandma took a blanket to school to beg the school to just take the kid in because they didn't have the resources. So like all the other problems we had in 844, where if you don't have the money, you can't take your kids to school, are still showing up in the new curriculum. It's not that changed. So why is CBC, even if it has this grandiose idea of what education and the philosophy around education is, why are all these learners still outside of it? Why, what are the gains that have been made even with the ones who have been able to adopt it? If 20 days in, so they are not supposed to learn for 20 days, what is happening in that window? Are parents even informed? Because if Mutemi seated here and he's like, okay, so I took my kid to school, I paid school fees, and they're just hanging out with desks. Like, how do you...
It's not like
yeah,
that.
that's what I'm saying. Like, how do you reconcile that for parents so that they understand, okay, my kid is in school, but this is what is going on? Or for those who've not been able to join, this is the window that the government is looking at to make sure that all of them are adopted. And if schools don't have the books, this is the window in which they will get for them to get the instruction to go on.
And even as we respond, there's one of the stated objectives, of course, is that nobody gets left behind. Yeah. So the transition, everybody transitions to the next level, which then goes to the point I was making earlier that there needed to be investment in education infrastructure.
Yeah.
Like right now, the point she's making is that we are scrambling because now kids are here, they are in grade 10, let's figure out what to do. I mean, part of our beef issues with this is this reaction, because I'm the second 844. Yeah. And I don't know, you're just ahead of us.
I'm the second last.
But you remember the chaos that were in when...
Lots of chaos.
We were
even told not to date 844.
Yeah, my generation was used again as guinea pigs. The same way with the age of my daughters are guinea pigs. Because we're actually destroying the lives of these kids. We are traumatizing them at a very crucial teenage age. So, as we I'm sure you've had conversations with ministry and all that. As we look at this in terms of an entire generation, you're talking about 1.13 million Kenyans, young Kenyans, at a very formative age, don't know what's going on.
It's not true, but anyway.
No, they don't. Because we might wish that they know, but they don't. Because you said yourself that the age between grade 10 and senior school basically is when they're supposed now to be forming concrete whatever, which is also contradictory, because then they've been told to choose their pathways way earlier. They can't switch if they do STEM or they do social sciences, and they decide after the 3 years of they don't want to do it anymore. There's no way of changing unless you go back to whatever. So there's that lack of thinking through these things. So
all right. Now there's so much detail about the new curriculum. The problem is nobody has time to hear it. I've gone to many TV stations, so people will raise a problem. I have the solution, but there's no time to explain it. Because when I go to detail, we don't want to hear the detail, so to speak, but we want to keep with the problem. So I don't know
because the problem persists.
Which approach to use, but let me try to answer problem directly.
Yes.
That the reason the children who have not gone to school has nothing to do with the system. So that is very important for us to hear. So now we should not take now every problem. You see, now when I'm hungry in my house, it's CBC. When I can't pay fees, it's CBC. No. We need to distinguish between when we're talking about the education system and when we are talking about the socio-political issues that are surrounding our being in Kenya in implementing that education system. So the parents right now are struggling financially. That is not because of the system, because of the education system. They're struggling financially because we are living in that kind of dispensation. High taxation, we're living in a dispensation where we are losing purchasing power. So because I'm losing purchasing power, I can tell you over the holiday, I talked about 600 parents personally. And the main reason why they haven't taken their children to school is because they don't have money. It's personal, it's family, it's family. And the schools, the education in Kenya is a shared responsibility between parents and the state, and it is shared within the constitution. So the state takes care of what we call academic. The state pays teachers, no parent pays teachers. The state will pay the bursar, the school bus driver. The state will pay for the materials, curriculum, everything, monitoring and evaluation.
Yeah.
But the parents must pay for personal emoluments of the child. So the thing you normally call school fees is personal. For example, the parents are saying 58,000 is too much for school fees. And they have told me that. But I was telling them 58,000 per term for a public school means 200 shillings per day in a boarding. So you're saying that for the child to live the whole day in a boarding school, eat 3 meals, get their dorm cleaned, get their whatever cleaned at 200 is too much to ask. I don't think it's true. So I think we're confusing things here. So the school fees required is 58. Let's say we don't have it, but don't say it's too much. It is not too much if it is 200 in a day, given the cost of things. So
I should ask you this question.
Yes.
I should ask you this question.
Yes.
There are levels to schools, right? C1 to C4.
Yes.
Do all the schools in all of these levels, do all of them have equal amounts of resources to actually make CBC work? I think the argument that you're making is it loses a crucial part of this, which is what Mutemi was saying. Is there enough investment to actually make CBC work? Are there enough teachers to teach these students the curriculum?
Yeah. That we should, first of all, remove the word CBC from our mouths. Education has just been here for a long time. The only thing is that we reformed the education that we had. We didn't throw away 844. We changed parts of 844 that are not working. For example, we removed knowledge, replaced with competence. Competence is something that you can do. Like, for example, if you're an artist, I can give you a paper and you draw. We removed memorization to replace with something you can do and make money out of. The second thing we changed is the teaching method. When I was trained as a teacher in KU, I was trained to lecture. We removed that. And we are now trained to be facilitators. In fact, we are not, very soon we'll have no teachers. We're going to have educators. And the parent is also a co-educator. And now we have a curriculum for parents, which we haven't reached that point because it will still cost money for the parents to be trained. But we changed the pedagogy, which is the learning method. We also changed the shaping, the structure of the curriculum. How many years here, how many years here, how many, and what do you study here and what do you study here. But the subjects remain subjects. Physics is just physics. Physics will never change.
But are there
maths will never change.
Teachers,
Sorry?
not, like, are there enough educators?
Okay.
Even if you, like, I do understand the romanticization of the work that is to be done and how it's going to look like, and it's commendable, honestly. But at the same time, the reality is, for all those, I was reading an article that had detailed that there's a shortage of about 58,000 teachers, and in specific pathways.
I will explain why.
Yeah. And if those very crucial elements of the educational system are not there, I doubt that you're going to get the results that you want. You won't have an engaged, empowered, ethical citizen.
That's one way of thinking. But another way of thinking is just to say, you've just bought a new car and you are a new driver on the road. Okay? So it will take you some time to drive well. So here, what we don't have, the teaching is a profession. So teachers cannot supply themselves for a job that has no demand. So for example, the education system that has just passed did not need enough of a lot of music teachers. They didn't need a lot of technical teachers. The 844 didn't need them. So because of that, people who know those things did not focus on being teachers as a career. But right now, TSC has advertised. Now those jobs are available. So, hold on.
Yeah, very briefly.
So I want you to distinguish between teething problems and so what is going to happen is that you are going to have a temporary shortage of some types of teachers. It's already envisaged and a solution has already been provided.
Okay.
The solution shall be that there are people who are not teachers with those skills. And those people are going to be retooled on teaching, just at the styles of teaching and so on. And we've already seen a lot of applications. People who are teaching TVET, so they know mechanical engineering, but they are not teachers.
George,
yes.
I'd like to get to Mutemi because we don't even need to call a parent in. He's a parent of a grade 10 student.
Okay.
He would know if what you're saying is true. And Mutemi, are the arguments he's making valid?
I like the analogy he has given of buying a new car and bringing a different framing. If I have never gone to a driving school and I buy a new car, am I going into the road to drive that car just because I bought a new car? Or do I need to first go to a driving school?
You first will go to a driving school.
So when you talk about piloting, I remember when you raised the issues of piloting, I think it's even the president then who spoke and said, we are doing piloting at a national level. Basically, they started implementing CBC without piloting. So you are saying, you buy a new car and enda kwa barabara utajua kupeleka tu ukiingia kwa barabara. Hata hiyo kugonga gongwa, if you keep having accidents, it's part of the learning. Stealing problems. That's what he's saying. But the thing is, when you talk about transition of every learner, and actually, when I heard this a few years ago, I was like, this is even worse than I thought. Because that means you then have the investment in terms of the money that you allocate as a government towards transition of these kids, knowing that you have a population that is challenged financially, then knowing that part of what the Constitution says is that you do not discriminate on any kid, then you make investments to rectify some of these things. The parents who can afford to take their kids to private schools, well and good, but the government then steps in socially for those who cannot, and based on the taxations that you're taking, you say we are allocating, based on this challenge you're seeing, parents, so many millions of people will be transitioning to the next level, then you need to make these investments and allocate this much and this part of our budget towards that. I don't see that anywhere. And we're not saying there's anything wrong with reforming the education system. We are saying, do not buy a car and you've not gone to a driving school and drive onto the road. In fact, you will be arrested immediately.
What's the worry?
And and the arresting, the questions you are asking, is actually like being a traffic cop on the road. Uli wapi tuonyeshe driving license? No. Because basically when parents are asking these questions, they are being treated like they have no right to ask questions. They do not know, the educations know better.
They're being eat forward.
What do you know? You don't ask questions that...
George, we need to wrap this up.
All right.
We need to wrap this up. So please, in a minute, because
it is not enough.
then because we have very little time left.
Okay.
But I really need you to answer the questions that are being asked here.
Okay.
Yeah, you answer the questions that Mutemi is asking, because he's a parent that's supposed to be part of your association.
All right. Okay. So, children will go to school. It is 100% transition by law. If you don't take your children to school, you will be arrested. So those children will go to school. 2 million children did exam. Out of that, almost 1.3 of them all want to go to Alliance. There is no space. It's not there.
It's even worse.
Yes.
2 million start exams and only 1.13 are transitioning.
No,
that's a huge
all the
crisis.
2 million are transitioning. All the 2 million. I'm just saying, out of the 2 million, their parents want all of them to go to Alliance. Even if it was possible to all fit 2 million in Alliance.
Well, I think, George, to be fair to the parents, that's because Alliance is perceived to have the best facility.
Precisely.
That's the problem that CBE was supposed to solve.
Yes, which it has solved, and that's what I'm explaining. So I'm saying that parents should understand that whatever made that alliance good before no longer counts. It no longer counts. There is no disadvantage that comes right now. So that the new classification is no longer national being the top and then extra county being those who get the next marks and so on. There is no competition between the learners. There is only the learners are doing their best. For example, the learner who is good in English, in languages, makes it, even if you look at the result slip of grade 9, it gives you results in all the areas and shows you that you're good in this one. It says, in terms of arts and sports, you got this. In terms of social science, you got this. In terms of STEM, you got this. So you're better off with this, but you can see all of them. So therefore, everybody who is being chosen to a certain school is already excellent in something. So we don't have number lasts. We just have excellent people in different places. So therefore, a school could be here, A, and that school does not have the combination you need. So for example, you want to be an engineer, you need to study mathematics, physics, and chemistry. And the school A here doesn't have facilities for mathematics, physics, and chemistry, but school B has. So that's how the placement was being done. So go to B, and that B should have come from the list that you provided. So the parents were supposed to support the learners and provide 12 options, so that if you don't get, if you don't get this option, you get this option. But most parents, they took 2 or 3 good options, and then they told the teacher, just fill the rest. So that's how it happened that some of the schools that were filled, the parent was not aware, but it was the parents. The parent is the one who decided that that be done that way. So for this year, we are encouraging parents, just be patient, go sit down and choose schools. Don't put a school which you will not like your child to go.
Okay.
Any school you don't want, don't put it there, because it is AI that will do placement, and it will match the list you've provided with the marks that the child is getting. There will be no human being inside there. So therefore, it is important that you don't put anything you don't like. So don't say, Cardinal Tunga, if it is not in your dreams. Put only what you like. So that's important. Now, the challenge that we had was social in nature. We're having a transition. The transition is technological. Placement for the first time is being done 100% through the Kenya Education Management Information System, KEMIS, which means that the parent is needing to use technology to make a choice, which they used to simply walk to a school and negotiate. And now that was not availed. So in December, we had lots of trouble, because then we had the system is saying, hey, according to your list, we've given your child the 4th option. And then the parent is saying, no, I don't want that. Yeah. And they are told, okay, go to the junior school and say that within the system. Don't say that on media. Go to the system and say you don't want that.
But there's 68
and then
kids who are rejected.
Yes, that's what I'm explaining. So then they go into the system, and then they oversubscribed certain schools. Because everybody wants the schools, like you said, that have a track record. And I can't blame them for that, because it's true that those schools have a track record.
All right, George.
Yeah.
That's a good place to end this part of the conversation. For the people watching us, asante sana for leaving your comments. Julius Musia says, my fingers are already itching, but I'll be patient. I believe that's because of the debate that was raging on. Adrian Terry says, training parents. So parents now need to be taught. I think that those are things that you should address, George, through your association.
Yeah.
But we need to get to the part where we close this conversation. Unfortunately, as much as this has been going on, we only have an hour to discuss this, and I believe we're well over that hour as things are right now. So we usually have 2 segments on this show. The first segment, before Justine comes in and blows your mind, is the segment where we tell you what you can get involved in that could inform policy making in this country. And this segment is called Serikali Really Wants to Hear From You, honestly. And for today, we have 2 divestitures. Divestitures are basically the government selling its state-owned enterprises, in one of these cases that I'm about to mention. And the second one would be Safaricom and the 35% stake in that government has of Safaricom shares. 15% of it is going to be divested, and they will be available for sale. This time there's a buyer, and the buyer is Vodacom, a South African company. Vodacom already owns a good 40% of Safaricom, with the 15% that is going to be added from the government. That will be 55, and well above the 50% that you'd say is half So 55% of a critical government or national infrastructure, if you'd like to call it that, is going to be in private hands. According to the Treasury Minister, John Mbadi, this is good because it creates very good capital that can be invested in the sovereign wealth fund that can then be poured into investments such as infrastructure, schooling, and all these things that need money poured into them. As it stands right now, the government is selling its 15% shares at 34 shillings per share, and that should bring in a good 204 billion Kenya shillings. And you can imagine where that money could go in. But there are so many issues regarding the sale. Two of them, first, is that many believe that the current price of 34 shillings per share is not the money that we deserve for that stake in Safaricom. Other people believe that maybe we should add it, and instead of making it 15%, let's add a good 5%, and that would mean that we'd then be left with 10% as a nation, I believe. I think that's the right math, right? Mm-hmm. So if the government currently owns 35% and they are selling 15%, the stakeholders, one of the stakeholders says that we should add from 15 to 20%, and that would leave a good 10%. Mm-hmm. No, 15% still owned by government. Mm-hmm. So the 5% that should be added on top of what is being sold already should be sold for you to buy at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. I don't know if you agree with that, and that is why I'm telling you this, so that you can participate in it. The other one is the Kenya Pipeline Company.
And all his supporters in different parts of the country. Journalists were abducted and beaten for recording and documenting most of the opposition's rallies. Some of the leaders who were re-elected have been old, like their entire, or even like for the most of Ugandans' lives, like this guy. So the guy who was in that clip is a member of parliament for Adjumani West. He's 86 years old, so he's a proper octogenarian. In that clip, you could see him reinventing live rewind dance moves, which is something I've never seen. And like when you look at him, he looks like he rose from the bones of a lot of African politicians to rise up and contest. And Ugandans, I want to tell you, that is elderly abuse. You guys should not have people that old in power. And also, he should be asleep, dreaming of the ancestral realm, resting as he should. And you can't have elders abusing power like that. There's also a video that was shared by Bobby Wine that showed people wearing the Electoral Commission vests, and they were just ticking M7 on the ballot box. And there's a video that we're going to show that Bobby Wine shared. People rigging elections used to try and hide, you know, but after 40 years of practicing and excelling, hiding is a sign of weakness. You brave people rig in broad daylight without consequences. So apparently, Museveni won with 71%, and the African Union was the first, I think, the first entity to send in their congratulations, because wherever Africans are being set back, AU is the co-driver. And AU even called it a really fun name, the democratic process. So away from all the theft by 1,000 paper cuts in Uganda, we had 10 police officers who were caught on camera assaulting young men playing pool in Nandi Hills, allegedly, according to IPOA. So this horrible incident came after another calendar entry into police brutality 2026, in which Shukri Adan was shot by cops less than a week ago due to a minor traffic incident. I think the Kenyan police default setting is brutality. It is so prevalent that a report by IMLU, yes, the report by the IMLU was very, it clarified that we have too many incidents of police brutality, that you're more likely to be shot by a cop than to be shot by an armed robber. And I think the Kenyan cops should reach out to the Armed Robbers Association to figure out how not to harm citizens. So after that incident, there was a lot of uproar, not just from Kenyans themselves, but also from people who were saying a couple of months ago, shoot them in the leg. All these people suddenly grew a conscience. And one of the condemners was the Nandi senator, who had been on record being a hype man for state violence. He went on record to state that police violence is really, really bad, when a couple of months ago he was advocating for activists to be harmed in Tanzania. Here's that clip. After the incident in Nandi, he then beat Maria Maba's record of so long a letter. He wrote so long a tweet, and part of that tweet was, the national security leadership must move in to prevent such acts of rogue police, and which is re-emerging frequently when he was one of the advocates. That is a quick pendulum swing from recklessness to reason in less than 3 months. So no matter who you are, you can't only take a stance against state violence and police brutality or any harmful rhetoric when it only comes when it only happens in your backyard. This should apply to everyone. The issue with police brutality, on top of extended police violence, injury, psychological damage to the victims, and just growing untrustworthiness and disdain for the police, is that if cops are allowed to do what they want, all our lives are in danger. And lastly, the Auditor General recently shared that 19.6 billion of the money that was part of the affordable housing project cannot be accounted for. So before your blood starts boiling right now, just set it to vein temperature first for context. Kenyan pay slips are hearing SHA, but kasha sound every time. It's happening in all statutory deductions. We have SHA for PAYU, SHA for SHA, SHA for affordable housing, SHA for NSSF. And however, that 20 billion that is unaccounted for in this particular case is not loan money to build the house. It was, or for the developers, it's a third worst thing. That money is money that should have been given as loans to people who want to buy the houses but don't have the money to buy the houses, so they borrow from the government so they can buy the houses and then pay the government what they've borrowed. And that money is from the World Bank. So affordable housing is a three-stone maker of raiding Kenyans. GOK takes your money. Some of it builds houses, some of it goes to treasury bills and bonds, and some of it builds school halls. I think that happened, in Alliance. People who want those houses but can't afford them are supposed to take loans. So they are trying to increase the mortgage market. So Mortgage Hive, stand up. Kenyans are working, right now Kenyans are working in the valley of the shadow of debt. And I'm letting you all know we can fear no evil because it's already in our pockets.
Damn. Such a bleak way to end the show.
I'm sorry.
But we have a comment here from Adrian Terry again, just in brilliant summarization of what happened over the past week. Adrian Terry says, I have to ask on these two systems currently in secondary school, where are the teachers focusing? And is it just chaos? Because I believe that's what it feels like for many Kenyans. All system having Form 3 and Form 4 or grade 10 and upcoming grade 11. So I guess this person is asking, where are the teachers focusing? They seem to not understand that, because they say the old system has Form 3 and Form 4, or do they focus on then grade 10 and upcoming grade 11? It just feels like chaos to them. Just to point this out, from this show, you've turned from Parents Association head to representation of teachers. And that's good, because it gives us a good balance of this. But this is a Kenyan who's anxious about this.
I would like to ask the Kenyan not to be anxious, because during the transition, we'll focus on both. So we have teachers committed to grade 10 who are tooled for that. And then we have the teachers that are completing the cycle of 844. And then at some point, there will also be a double intake at the university.
Yeah.
So there will also be CBC and 844 coming in the same time. It also happened during our transition. So the focus is on both.
Okay. An additional question here. I think this is something you partly addressed. Mutemi, I'll let you handle this. Why don't parents want kids to go to certain schools? They say that this is a problem that needs to be solved.
Actually, that's the essence of our calling for the government to have been better prepared. It's because every Kenyan knows that certain schools have the required equipment or facilities to deliver the envision CBC.
Yeah.
And that majority of Kenyan schools don't have those resources, those facilities. So when you're saying that the government needs to make better investment before rolling out, even the piloting, if the piloting had been done, all these issues, challenges you are facing would have been identified at the piloting stage.
Yes.
And then it's noble that, for example, I don't understand how a child can be placed, a Nairobi Kangore child can be placed in a Harambee school in even Murang'a or wherever, or Western Kenya. That's a massive failure. But ideally, the schools, the countries we are modeling ourselves on, Singapore, Finland, what they did was that in Singapore, in Finland, it doesn't matter where you live.
Yeah.
You can move from this neighborhood to another neighborhood, and you'll find the same facilities in the school, and your kid will just walk into that school. And ideally, that's what the education reform, I don't want to say CBC or CBE, was supposed to achieve by equalizing as per the constitution. I don't know whether that is the case. That's what whether that is a fact or it's my opinion.
Yeah, it's a fact.
Yeah, so that's
a very good way of saying it, because you keep saying that.
Because it's supposed to be that you are equalizing, but then that's not happening. So because parents want the best for their kids, then they want them, hata kama hakuna curriculum, hakuna walimu, wapeleke alliance, at least walimu alliance watajua what to do with the kids as the government tries to figure out itself.
Yeah. Asante sana, Mutemi. Asante. George,
yes,
asante for coming. It was really good because we got to learn a bit about how this system works. Not a bit, because it's essentially the foundation of the system. We got to learn it from you. So thank you so much for making time. We'd love to have you again, because there's so much that we didn't touch on, and comments kept coming in about the things you're saying.
We need to make the show longer.
Yeah, we need to make it longer. As long as you two promise to come back. If we sign a treaty afterwards, there's going to be another one, then we'll definitely do it again. Adrian says again that source of all Kenya shillings is the government itself. Finding the money is the easiest job for a government or authority that has its own currency. The last part, I think that's not a very good idea to print money and pour it into the economy. That's not a very good way of managing a country. But you're very right about that point, because Justine, Julian said that the problem with government is spending last week when you had him here. So yes, the money can be found. It's just that there's so many priorities, and the priorities that government considers number one are not the priorities that you might consider first. Go and watch that episode. It's a very good episode that will give you the facts about this opinion that you just given. Asante, Adrian. Also Lewis, asante for watching. I apologize for the audio issues. Justine, Mutemi, George, unfortunately we have to wrap it up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Asante for coming. Justine, any final words? That sounds really bad.
Any final words? I hope I see you guys next week. Because like you made it seem like this is my last episode.
I know. That's not what I meant, guys. But take care of yourself. Thank you for staying with us. I've been your lead host, Juana. Justine has been my co-host. Mutemi, George, thank you for making time again. See you on the next one. Cheers.